Hello everyone, let's get started. I'm Gary Dowdy with Pervasive Path Consulting. Joining me today for this webinar will be Brian Stein, also with Pervasive. Pervasive is a mobile strategy and technology consulting firm. Just like the image on the screen shows, some lessons are painful, and you hope to avoid them again. Our experience includes more than 40 enterprise mobile implementations, including 8 of the top 25 banks in North America and a dozen Fortune 500 companies, from strategy to development to launch and adoption. This webinar, 6 tips for launching a successful mobile initiative, will help you avoid mistakes from lessons already learned. So let's state the obvious. Mobile is hot. Depending on which analyst you subscribe to, smartphone shipments have or soon will exceed PC shipments. Mobile internet usage will surpass traditional internet connectivity in just a few short years. And it seems like every day a major corporation or technology company announces some type of mobile initiative. Back at home, you're probably asking yourself the questions on this screen and a lot more. Why do mobile projects cost so much? Do I have the right people or skills for my mobile projects? Can I deliver this project on time? And if I do, will the solution scale and be reliable? Are we using the right tools? What am I not thinking about but should be? Is my IT department ready? And why is this so hard? Of course, it'd be great to be as magical as a genie and simply make all these questions go away. Well, I can't help you with that, but what I can do is share lessons learned from our enterprise mobile projects and hope allaying some of your fears and helping you to avoid some common pitfalls. For this discussion, we're going to cover 6 key items on how to develop a mobile strategy specific to your organization objectives and capabilities, manage expectations regarding features and timelines, understand and plan for integration challenges, select a development approach, whether that be native or platform, and we'll cover these terms later in this webinar, define an appropriate testing and deployment plan, and make, or should I more appropriately say, put adoption and the user experience higher up on your priority list.
Too often, we found that mobile initiatives are based on a mandate from leadership to have an app in the iTunes Store by X date, rather than beginning with a comprehensive strategy which reflects the overall objectives and capabilities of the organization. A mobile strategy should accomplish the following goals. It should describe the functionality to be delivered, identify the target devices, whether they're feature phones, smartphones, tablets, or even embedded devices, and it should prioritize the target delivery channels from SMS to mobile web to applications. To develop these answers, an effective approach is to adhere to the adage, seek first to understand, then be understood. First, you have to understand the company strategy and how it relates to online and offline channels. This will help to ensure that your mobile strategy supports a holistic customer experience across touchpoints. Secondly, you should consider who are you developing your mobile solutions for. Here you want to use customer demographics to inform the decision as to what type of solutions you should build, and consider the technical competency of your users and penetration of device types across user groups, as well as other factors. For instance, if you're targeting the mass market, an application which runs only on a $500 smartphone may not be the best choice for you. Next, you have to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve with mobile? Is this simply a Me Too offering, where mobile is a checkbox on your corporate to-do list? Or do you want to accomplish specific goals such as brand extension, customer service, revenue generation, or process optimization and cost reduction? As with any goal, you'll also want to spend some time asking, How will you measure success against your objectives? Fourth, you should identify what unique value or capabilities your organization can provide in order to differentiate your offering. Do you have relevant data you can present or services you can offer? Without these capabilities, you'll likely end up with marketing or brochureware which provides limited value to the end user and is quickly forgotten. Only after you've answered the above questions can you begin to define the mobile appropriate use cases. A critical concept for our clients is the realization that mobile is not an extension of a website. In fact, it's the opposite, and the detailed, granular functionality which makes sense in a desktop application or website do not necessarily translate to the mobile channel. For mobile, you should focus on high-value, common transactions and keep it simple. Mobile is all about immediacy. For example, in one case, we had to convince a Midwest bank not to provide 2 years of transaction history via the mobile app as they did in online banking. The reality is, nobody's going to scroll through 2 years' worth of data on their phone, and providing that data would have resulted in degraded application performance and user experience. Finally, it's important to make sure that your mobile initiatives are coordinated across the entire organization. Launching a new mobile product should be done in conjunction with marketing, IT, and may also require training for call center agents, tellers, and others. As an example of bad coordination across the enterprise, we look to Barney's from this past September, when their marketing department decided to embrace mobile and included a QR code on a full-page ad in the New York Times. Had they done this in coordination with IT, they may have realized that the QR code took the customers to a non-mobile optimized site, and IT would have helped them avoid a bad user experience, not to mention the negative resulting press that this mistake generated.
Number 2, how do you manage expectations regarding features and timelines? Marketing, and probably everyone else, wants everything in version 1. You can't blame them for the wish list, but remember, it's just that. As with any initiative, it's imperative to work closely with your stakeholders to prioritize items in order of importance, starting with the separation of the nice-to-have versus the gotta-haves. The first question is whether to start with your mobile web or a mobile application. You need to be sure to take emotion out of the equation. Do you really need an app in the App Store, or will a mobile web work just fine? Sure, there's marketing appeal of being in the Apple App Store, but how many apps have you downloaded to your phone and maybe used once or twice and then forgot about it? One study has shown that over 80% of the users did not use an app again after the first time. For this reason, we recommend launching a mobile website first before developing an app for the iPhone or any other device. Having a mobile-friendly site first ensures that you have thought through repurposing of your content and the user experience to deliver your message and value proposition. In addition, you will be able to glean analytics from the users accessing your mobile site as to the device types and what pages they are viewing. This information should help you create a fact-based foundation for your roadmap. You need to educate your cohorts and end users that mobile is iterative. Just as the platform itself is evolving, so will your content and applications. Most people use the Agile method for this type of incremental improvement, as the feedback loop from end users is a great way to help prioritize the next set of enhancements. For those instances where you deploy an app, well-timed updates can serve to re-engage your users and help reinforce your brand.
Mobile computing is often referred to as ubiquitous or pervasive computing because the technology allows users to interact with systems and data from any device wherever they may be. While middleware, often web services, allows for connectivity between those systems and your mobile solutions, Don't assume that because your organization has middleware, that integration will be easy. Often, web services have been purpose-built for other applications, and while they may provide a means for getting at and updating the data, they won't necessarily contain the business rules and logic. One large bank that we worked with had an extensive library of web services for accessing and manipulating customer accounts, but all of the logic for sorting and displaying those accounts resided in their online banking system, as well as the business rules regarding which accounts were able to be transferred to or from. They were faced with the decision of either modifying their middleware, which would require additional changes to their online banking system, or rewriting and replicating the business logic into their mobile offerings. Either choice had a significant impact to both the development and testing efforts. They ended up recreating the logic in the mobile channel, which added about 1 month to the development and at least 2 months to the testing phase. Another customer we worked with utilized a hosted back-end system, which provided web services for replicating data across the organization. However, because these web services were originally provided for nightly processing and were owned by the third party, we discovered they were offline from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. local time, a window which we couldn't control. Obviously, the bank couldn't have their mobile solutions unavailable to customers during such a peak period, and as such, they were forced to start from scratch in developing an alternative integration method. In both cases, what was originally scoped as a short, moderately priced project ended up taking much longer and costing significantly more than expected. This had negative implications, not only for the organization, as they lost their first mover advantage relative to their peers, but also political impacts for project sponsors who had committed to their bosses that they would have a mobile solution launched by a certain date. Clearly, the cost of underestimating integration can be severe. Even once you've established integration between your mobile infrastructure and back-end systems, you aren't necessarily done. Most B2C applications assume real-time connectivity between the mobile device and the host system. But if that connectivity can't be relied on and your end users need continuous access, you'll have to design for data replication and synchronization in order to allow for offline processing. This will require local data storage, which may need to be encrypted, as well as additional logic on both the client and server side. If you're facing these types of requirements, I urge you to look at an existing platform or other product offering to source these capabilities, which brings us to the next lesson.
Once you understand what you're going to build, you need to determine how you want to build it. That's number 4 of our 6 items today. The first decision of your development approach is native or platform. By native, I'm talking about developing an application specific to a device type. For example, Apple has a development kit for creating native applications for the iPhone, iPad, and the iPod Touch. Android, BlackBerry, and Windows have similar kits. A platform is a development environment that provides for a common code base and allows you to deploy on multiple devices. The phrase write once, deploy everywhere is fairly synonymous with such software vendors as Kony, Antenna Software, Sybase, and many others. There are pros and cons to each approach. Here are some key considerations. Will your mobile initiative target one or many form factors? In other words, do you control the device of the end user? If so, you may decide to support only one device. Let's say that's a Samsung Galaxy S2 running Android 2.3 on the T-Mobile network. However, if you don't have control over the end user device and those other factors, you need to decide how many you need to support now and in the near future. Some companies choose only to deploy on the Apple iPhone and ignore the others. That type of decision depends, again, on your end users. And Android has at least 43% of the smartphone market share in the United States. How many versions of your applications will you support at any given time across X number of phone types times Y number of operating systems? So as you can quickly see, the impact can be exponential when you start supporting a number of device types. What type of talent do you have available for development and support? Will you use an internal resource or a third-party development shop or a software vendor for initial development? For many concurrent software languages and related skills, how many can your organization train and maintain? Whatever your choice, you need to think beyond just development and consider sustaining support of the application, which includes patches, operating system updates, bugs, and so forth. For a platform, you should also consider the cost for license and maintenance, which should absolutely figure into your business case and approach.
Our fifth lesson focuses on testing and deployment. These are important concepts for any software development project, but the diversity of target devices and platforms creates additional challenges for mobile initiatives. First, with testing, you need to test not only the application functionality, but also the user interface across multiple devices and/or platforms. You may recall the early days of web development, when we optimized web pages for specific versions of Netscape and Internet Explorer, or for certain screen resolutions. Where standardization of HTML has fortunately reduced the need for this customization on the web, mobile continues to become more divergent as tablets and new operating systems emerge. This divergence will necessitate the need for additional testing for both mobile websites and apps. A number of tools and services exist to help mitigate these challenges, but nonetheless, the effort should not be underestimated. The first category of tools is simulators. These allow PC-based testing, which is great for unit and functional testing, but won't necessarily give you a 100% accurate picture of the final rendering, and as such, shouldn't be exclusively used as a testing approach. The next category covers remote testing and automation services, such as those provided by companies like Device Anywhere. These tools provide remote access to and testing on a variety of devices, often in the tens of thousands of different device types which are available to you. This can give a more realistic and precise representation of the end-user experience and also allow for scripted test execution. These types of tools will help accelerate the testing and reduce the need for you to purchase hundreds of phones for your team. That being said, no tool can completely eliminate the need for doing a portion of testing on physical devices in the hands of your team, which brings us to our third and most important category, on-device testing. Although device makers strive for consistency across device types, the use of different screen sizes, trackballs versus trackpads, and other interface changes necessitate testing across multiple devices even within a given category. For this reason, we recommend selecting 2 or 3 of the most popular devices on a given platform. For example, an iPhone 3 as well as an iPhone 4S, a BlackBerry Bold as well as a BlackBerry Touch, and so on, and this will make sure that you cover a majority of your user types. Once you figure out the tools for testing, you'll want to think about the test cases. As we talked about during the integration discussion, you've hopefully designed your apps to handle both connected and disconnected states. Even if you've chosen not to support offline functionality, it's still necessary to make sure your solution gracefully handles the loss of the signal and provides a positive user experience in that case. Don't forget to simulate the loss of data connectivity as part of your test cases. Finally, as you plan for on-device testing over the carrier network, and also think about application certification by the app stores, you may need to think about external connectivity to your QA environment. Providing internet-facing test environments is a change to most corporate policies and approaches, and will often take time to put this type of change in place. Planning ahead for such a requirement can help avoid project delays during the final phase of testing and keep your launch on schedule. Now that brings us to deployment. Launching a mobile initiative requires coordination of activities, both internal and external to your organization. You'll want to make sure the App Store has sufficient time to certify your applications, and then, once they do, you'll want to make sure they hold it and not make it publicly available until your launch date. Also, you'll want to plan ahead and make sure that marketing activities are timed to coincide or shortly follow the release of your application, and that any delays in your project are communicated in a timely manner back to marketing so that they can update their calendar as well. Similarly, a launch of a mobile project is likely, at least initially, to generate increased traffic to your customer support center. Whether you have dedicated specialists or general training for your team, it is important that you are prepared to answer customer questions about the mobile application, but also, to some extent, address questions on how to use these apps across the supported device types. For questions your team won't be prepared to answer, make sure they have the appropriate escalation protocols, whether you're referring them to Apple support, the carriers, or other centers. As you get into incremental releases of mobile projects, you'll want to start to plan for multiple test environments, which will allow for sustaining support of the initial release while also allowing for testing of the new application. You should also think about how to roll back to a prior version of a release if something goes wrong during the launch. Finally, support processes differ if your application is for the enterprise or in-house versus consumer-facing. If you're rolling out an employee solution, you want to make sure you have control over the phone, its security, and the ability to wipe the phone and corresponding data if the phone is lost or stolen, and also to push out applications updates based on your schedule. This is called mobile device management and can help with the provisioning, management, and securing of both corporate-provided devices as well as employee-owned devices. There are some neat tools on the market which can greatly improve this support and maintenance process. Thinking through which MDM tools are right for your organization is a process which is beyond the scope of this webinar, but if it's a decision you're facing, let us know and we can share some additional insight with you.
Last but not least, number 6, the Launch Your Mobile initiative is not the end game. Far from it. Adoption becomes the focus of your efforts. Unfortunately, the saying, if you build it, they will come, doesn't necessarily apply to mobile. In order to ensure that your customers and or employees will try and continue to use your mobile application, you need to actively promote it, and in some cases, even incent usage. An adoption framework is holistic and helps get everyone on the same page. You need to coordinate with customer communications, IT, operations, the sales force, and marketing. You make sure that you have signage within your physical locations promoting your new mobile campaigns, including QR codes to make accessing the mobile application simple. Similarly, you should include information about your mobile application via QR codes on marketing materials, catalogs, and even on product packaging. In traditional internet marketing parlance, you need to synchronize your offline or physical channels with that of your virtual ones. Moreover, you need to make sure that as an organization grows its mobile efforts, they are coordinated across the enterprise. Nobody wants to have 5 different apps on their phone, each with providing a different capability and or method with interacting with the organization. Whether on the mobile web or a mobile app, you will want to use a common entry point which bundles these applications together for a seamless user experience. This sounds straightforward, but it gets a lot more complicated if your organization has several initiatives, some of which may be run by different groups. And finally, as users adopt to your applications, you want to make sure that you are capturing and leveraging analytics. Early on in the project, you define success criteria and how to measure it. For your launch and all subsequent activities, measuring cause and effect is key. If you have all these components in place, you are well on your way. But remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
On a final note, before we open the session to Q&A, at Pervasive, we've built our methodology to incorporate these lessons learned and plan for similar pitfalls. Whether you use our approach or some other process, it's important that you incorporate a structured flow of activities with stage gates or decision points in order to ensure your project stays on track. We'd be happy to talk with you more about how Pervasive can help your organization with their mobile initiative, but at this point, I'll conclude the formal presentation and open it up for questions and or thoughts from the audience. At this point, if you have questions, feel free to use the webinar tool to either enter them into the question box, raise your hand, or simply enter them into the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer all of them.
Hey, Brian, I have one online question here. We've been developing apps for specific applications and have multiple apps in the App Store. Is this a best practice?
Generally, I would have to say no. If you have specific functions and your user base is clearly delineated, you may want to go with separate apps in the App Store. But generally, when I open up the App Store and see multiple offerings under a single brand, I get confused. Take, for example, my insurance company. They have 6 different applications depending on the product line, but judging by the descriptions in the App Store, I'd have to be an underwriter just to figure it out. The recommended scenario is to have a single application that supports your brand and then use user authentication and role-based policies to provide the specific functionality to the specific audience.
Great, thanks. I have one more here, but for those that want to ask a question out loud, just click the little hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and that'll signal that we need to open up your mic. All right, this one says, I'm hearing a lot about HTML5. Will I even need to develop device-specific apps, or can I just use HTML5?
Good question. HTML5 is definitely getting a lot of publicity these days, and it's considered by some to be a panacea for the mobile web. There's no question HTML5 provides a lot more capabilities than previous iterations of the standard, and certainly will allow you to support more device types with a mobile web solution. But I'd caution against considering it a silver bullet solution in that it doesn't provide the access to specific device capabilities. So if you want to use the device camera, the GPS, have access to the user's address book, etc., you'll want to use the specific APIs provided by the manufacturers. And in order to do that, you'll need on-device capabilities offered via an application.
Great, thanks. And that's the end of our online or virtual questions.
All right, well, then in that case, we'll conclude the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. A replay as well as a copy of the slides will be available for download later this afternoon on our website at www.pervasivepath.com/blog. Additionally, if you have further interest in exploring mobile and specifically how you can develop a mobile strategy for your organization, please work with New Horizons account representatives to learn about our strategy class offerings and how you can participate one-on-one in person with us to better understand these topics. Thanks to New Horizons for hosting us today, and thanks again for everyone's time. Take care and have a great day.